Welcome back everybody to my desk and another one of my time-lapse model build videos. And today we're going to be looking at the construction of this, a Hasegawa 1/48 scale B5N2 Kate. Now out of all of the kits I'm currently building in this round, this will be the only one that will be out of box. I'm not doing quite shit. I say that. The only modification I'm doing is I'm using a Wolfpack wing fold kit. But other than that, the decals, everything else is out of the box. So Hasegawa did have a version of this kit that came out that did have a wing fold in it. This particular boxing doesn't, so I'm using this to get the same look. It gives me just a bit more space on the shelf to squeeze in more planes when the wings are folded, just like an aircraft carrier. So as I said, we built out of the box using the kit decals plus that conversion kit, and the conversion kit doesn't look too hard. You literally just cut the wings on a pre-cut line. It's actually marked on the wing where you need to cut specifically because of the previous mentioned version, and then you just have to scale down the wing thickness a little bit and then assemble it all up and paint it. So it's going to be relatively easy to do. Hopefully relatively easy to do. And yeah, otherwise I'm actually building it as this exact airframe here with the red tail. This was the lead aircraft on the attack on Pearl Harbor. It'll have the bomb, the wheels will be down, the cockpits will all be open, and it's going to look really, really good. And I have a couple of Japanese aircraft over there now. I got a Gecko and a Zero, so this will just add to that collection. It's all of them in the green color as well, which is pretty cool. So it'd be nice to add another one, and this has been sitting around for a while. I picked this up at a model show many years ago for like, I think I paid like $15 for this or something. So yeah, anyways, let's get right into this. You'll be able to watch me build this up. Part one, this video here just takes it up to the point of primer. Part two will have all of the painting, decaling, and weathering. So just be aware of that if you do want to see what part of the build you want to see. It's in two separate parts. So yeah, let's jump right into it. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. So as usual with these aircraft kits, I do get started building the cockpit. This aircraft actually has quite a complicated cockpit. There's kind of three... This aircraft actually has a pretty complicated cockpit. There's kind of three sections. There's the forward pilot section, and then there's kind of a middle bombardier navigator section. Then there's the rear gunner section, and all three are, for the most part, kind of a separate little area. So it involves quite a bit of work to get all of that set up. And then there's actually side walls that assemble the cockpit into kind of like a little egg that gets nested inside the fuselage. So all of that had to be assembled up and lined up and all that kind of stuff, and then, you know, weathered and all that. So it took a little bit of work to get it all done, but I mean, the cockpit looks amazing. You're not going to see much when it's assembled, but the cockpit looks really, really good when constructed in this format. So I figure it's time for a bit of a quick check-in with this kit, just show you kind of where I ended up. So we have, for the most part, I'm still poking away on the interior. There's not a lot on these fuselage sides just because of the nature of the kit, how everything's a tub. I did go ahead and paint around here, that interior color. The interior color, by the way, is a mix between the RAF interior green and a little bit of, I believe I used pale green. Yeah. So I've mixed, I don't have ratios or anything, but yeah. So here's, it's 71305, which is interior gray green, which is the RAF color, and then 71095 pale green. I painted the Hurricane cockpit the RAF interior color, and then I just added a little bit of this pale green until the green looked a slightly different shade. And I approximated what you would see with this Nakajima interior green color. So the plane itself, you can see I painted around the cockpit bits. We'll have to see how that pans out after I glue it together, how the seams look. But yeah, we'll see. I might just have to clean that up and touch it up afterwards with a bit of pre-mixed paint, but that won't be too hard. Most of the work has gone into the actual interior pieces. So you've got your cockpit sidewalls and the cockpit floor. You'll see I've gone through and did a bunch of interior detail painting on here. It still needs black wash and dry brushing. And then there's a whole bunch of other interior parts here. These are obviously not interior, but you've got the bomb sight here, which fits on the side. These are all of your interior bulkhead pieces. This seat actually gets mounted dead center on this floor like that, but you have to glue it. Machine gun at the back. This is the upper, it fits up on top here once everything gets assembled. And then this is your rear piece that goes back here. And then you've got your radio stack, which glues into the middle here. And you've got your instrument panel, which kind of glues up into here, and your pilot seat. These have also been gloss coated in preparation for decals, which I'll be doing here in a second. And then I'm going to get black wash on everything and then dry brush everything and then start assembling. And I'm at the same point with the Hurricane where I got to dry brush some pieces, but I'm going to get this to a stage where I can dry brush both at the same time. So that's where this stands. So for right now, I'm going to start, I'm not going to bother with those because they're going to need decals, but on some of these parts here, I'm going to go ahead and start hitting it with some black wash and get ready to do some decaling on this and then some overall dry brushing and just get these cockpits to the point when I can start assembling things. So let's get right at it.
So now that I start getting the whole kind of cockpit egg glued together, I make sure all of that is nice and tight and glued, and all the seams are really, really well bonded. Stops anything from kind of popping out after it's all assembled. And then you see I go ahead, I start getting that fuselage glued together. I do kind of the standard fuselage gluing technique I usually use, where I get it assembled. I start gluing kind of in one area near, for example, a forward upper cowling, and then I slowly work my way down the fuselage around the seams and back across the bottom. And then I glue little sections at a time with the extra thin. That allows it to capillary in, get a really good bond. And I make sure that if it's any type of warpage happening, or if there's any type of pressure from inside pushing out, I don't pop it. I don't cause gaps to form. I glue nice and slow, work my way around. I make sure all the seams are as tight as I can possibly get them as I work around. And that makes sure I get the least amount of cleanup at the end and the best possible joint seam as I glue it all together. And then after that, I move on to the wings. Because I'm using that aftermarket wing fold kit, you'll see I have to start cutting the wings apart. As I mentioned I believe I mentioned earlier in the video, the Hasegawa kit came with a version from the factory that had a wing fold in it. This particular boxing doesn't have those extra parts, but the molding, the tooling, includes a pre-marked line where the wing folds go. So it makes life really easy. We just cut along this existing kind of mark, and it allows you to cut right where it needs to cut. And then I can get that Wolfpack set glued in. Unfortunately, it involved quite a bit of sanding. And I had to make sure that the edges of the wing were thin enough that the resin would fit without any issues. But it wasn't that difficult, and I got it all put together. And then you can see once I get those wing fold areas set and sanded and everything lines up, I just start gluing everything together. I glue the wing fold in with a bit of super glue, and then I get the upper wing glued on, make sure the seams look good, make sure everything lines up, and then glue it all together. And then you'll see, I mean, it's not a perfect fit. So you'll see here, I kind of go around after the fact with a little bit of Mr. Surfacer, and I just clean up some of the little seams that have been left where that resin plug kind of meets the plastic edge. Surprisingly little cleanup was required considering the amount of work that went into it and the fact that it was an aftermarket resin. As well with the flaps, you'll see I've assembled the flaps. I use a little bit of Mr. Surfacer on that as well because I will be building them with the flaps extended, and then those join seams just need the slightest amount of cleanup, as does the seam on the wing inside the flap housing. That seam is always a difficult seam to clean up, and so instead of fighting with it in sandpaper, I just use a little bit of Mr. Surfacer, hide the worst of the crimes, and then I start playing around with the wing to body fuselage joint. And here is just kind of a copy paste of what I did with the inner wing, with the outer wing panels, just sanding those edges, getting the resin plugs cleaned up, getting them glued together, and then cleaning up whatever little seams I have with a bit of putty in Mr. Surfacer to make sure the outer wings look just as good as those inner wings. So here I start getting work done on the clear parts. You'll see I've glued the forward windscreen onto the aircraft, and then I mask it using the Edward mask set that I had. And then luckily Hasegawa has included 2 sets of canopies. One canopy is the whole piece you would use if you wanted the canopy closed. And they also include all of the individual pieces if you choose to build it with the canopies open. And I'm going ahead and building it with the canopy open. So in this case, I actually glue that single greenhouse canopy piece in place with just a little bit of white glue. And then you'll see I tape that down pretty heavily to make sure it stays in place. And then I go ahead and mask all of those individual canopy pieces again with that Edward masking set that I had. And then when I paint it, the single piece greenhouse piece that's on the airframe, it's I don't have to worry about it. It's sacrificial. I can paint over it and then pull it off at the end. And all I got to do is just do some light cleanup along those seams where the white glue was. And then those individual canopy pieces, which will be painted individually, can simply just be glued into place with whatever glue I choose to use. Mono glue, white glue, crystal clear, all kinds of different stuff you can use to glue the canopies on. I don't have a particular thing. I tend to just use different glues based off of that particular airframe. But anyways, yeah, so that's you'll see me doing that. And so if you're wondering why when I get that first coat of primer on, it looks like I just painted over the canopy, it's because it's a sacrificial canopy. So yeah, this is a great way of doing it if you have that ability to do it that way. Makes life a lot more easy. And yeah, we get this canopy ready to go.
So here we are, and I think I'm at a good point on this kit that I can pretty clearly wrap up part 1 of this build series and move on to part 2. So where am I with the kit? Well, I'm pretty much exactly where I was the last time, you know, a second ago with what you saw. So the aircraft is assembled. It's ready for paint as much as possible. You'll see everything is ready. The wing folds are cleaned up. Everything is primed. I've cleaned up all of the little seams and corners. A little dusty. That's been bothering me. The cowling is here. So it is still separate, but I'll paint this up and glue this on after the fact. That way I can install the engine later and paint it all up and do all that stuff at the end. So it's ready. I've got the flaps here ready for paint, and the outer wings are here also ready for paint. So that's pretty much all I need to finish. After, there's nothing else I can really do on this until I paint it and then start going through and you know, pulling off. Well, I have to do some weathering, and then I'll pull off this old canopy and start finishing off more of the interior pieces and get the cowling of the engines, the landing gears, and all that stuff assembled. So that is where this stands, and yeah, it's been a really easy build. I mean, I made a couple of mistakes, a couple of issues. The big one was up here at the front. This section here, this nose ring here, was separate from the rest of the fuselage halves, and it was split in half, and I should have glued this half to this half and this half to this half and then assembled the fuselages, but instead I assembled this and then assembled this, and it caused a little bit of an issue with some of the seams here. But you know, it's also the demarcation line between the green and the black, so you're not really going to notice it. It's going to have a natural cut line, so any kind of small variation is going to get hidden in that. But other than that, everything went together really, really well. Pretty happy with it. It's Hasegawa. It's kind of like a Tamiya kit. It's just shake and bake. It falls together. So nice and easy. The next step in part 2, which the intro for part 2 will also go over it. But anyways, first thing I got to do now is start painting. I'll start with the red tail, and then I'll do the gray bottom, and then I'll do the green top, and then I'll mask off, and I'll do the black around the cowling. And then that's basically it. I'll be able to pull all the masking off and decal, weather, and flat coat, and then move on. So this is easy. There's nothing crazy going on with this. I'm not doing any kind of metal paint chipping or anything. It's going to be pretty much as was in Pearl Harbor, which is more of a fresh paint color. The green would have just been painted on, and the bottom color would have just been painted on the aircraft prior to the attack. So it would have been fresh paint, not a lot of weathering, but just enough to make it look dirty. I'll do some exhaust staining and some stripling and oil strips and stuff like that. So just enough to make it look interesting, but not enough to make it look horribly dirty. I want it to look fresh and clean. So that's the status on that. So once part 2 is completed, I'll have the link down below. So if you're watching this, you know, months or years after I actually uploaded this, so just go down to the description. You'll see the link to part 2, and then you can watch that. And I might even put a link up top if I can remember. But if not, if part 2 hasn't been completed yet and you're watching this pretty soon after I release it, then just wait a little while. I suspect it's going to be a few months before I get this one finished. There is another one of the 4 models I'm building, the Hurricane, that I am going to focus on because it is for somebody and I want to get it done. So it's going to be the priority, and everything else I'll kind of get to as I get to. Yeah, so on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for watching. If you did watch all the way, thank you. I know these videos can get long and boring, and in a lot of cases, people just watch them in the background. That's what I do when I tend to watch model building videos on YouTube. I just have them running in the background while I'm sitting here building models or doing dishes or whatever it might be. Because to sit there and watch someone build a model is actually, it's kind of boring. But it's good to have in the background and just keep people occupied. So thank you for watching if you have, and we're going to wrap it up there. We'll see you all next time.